area
you're good to
for
go.
volunteers.
All right, you're good. Shut it up. All right.
Well, I have things to shoot.
Sure, I got some cashews and stuff in the area.
Roger that, RSO, TD. TD's go. CMD.
CMD is go.
Safety. Safety's go. Prop lead.
Prop lead is go.
Stage 1.
Stage 1 is go.
GT.
GT is go.
ACE.
ACE is go.
LD.
LD is go.
Launch team is go to begin propellant loading operations at T-minus 1 hour, 30 minutes. That completes our low.
And launch team, this is LCA on countdown. We do have another constraint that will be waived for this op. The upper limit on constraint 13.017, the calculated tail angle, was 88.1 degrees, will now be 88.6 degrees for the remainder of the op.
Feet are soaked.
Constraint that will be waived for this op. The upper limit on constraint 13.017, the calculated tail angle, was 88.1 degrees, will now be 88.6 degrees for the remainder of the op.
And Ops 1, LC step 369, can you verify SIGI frame 3 settings?
Copy, LC, stand by.
So like I did like settings like 1250.
LC reading top to bottom. Control word 1 is set to 0000. Data ready button is checked. Insert data set to position. Position latitude. Aces go. Aces go. Mars.
Mars is go.
Mars is go. CMD.
CMD is go.
CMD is go. LD.
LD is go.
LD is go. OA.
In honor of J.R. Thompson, a man who inspired us to dream big and who was the driving force for our company and our nation's space program, OA is go.
OA is go. Launch team is go to proceed with final countdown at T-minus 10 minutes. Check 418.
That's it. Coming out of the hole.
C1 SIGI nav mode nominal. Copy all. Check all steps through step 447. Leg 1, I'll wait for your call on OCCS commanding and auto sequence startup. Copy. minus 3 minutes.
You just doing still? Or you doing video? Just still.
LC Elect 1, verified mission time set to T-minus 180 at T-minus 3 minutes, 10 seconds. Auto sequence startup. Control is transferred to CSOE. ODM bus voltages and currents nominal.
It's kind of cool.
Copy all.
See it, just punch right through it. Right.
LC Core 1, VTSO is
I
open.
think you'll see the flame.
Copy, Core 1.
The what?
I think you'll see the flame trail even in the glass.
Oh, it'll be bright. Should I make some different shots too?
Who wants the same?
EHS charging is nominal.
Shots every
Roger that, EHS.
Yeah, you can just repurpose those.
Yeah, short. Up on 2 minutes.
And T-minus 2 minutes.
Called it. You must be plugged into your.
I set up a timer when they said
You chose
they gave us
for the
the time. They
substitution.
said at 4:44, so I was like,
Oh, they did?
I
Oh.
said that. I don't have it in a second.
You're pretty close, though. I'm telling you.
T-minus 1 minute, 30 seconds.
It does appear there.
Mark.
Don't try it.
TC Core 1, preliminary octane pressurization started.
Copy, Core 1. T-minus 1 minute. Mark.
Preliminary fuel tank pressurization started.
Roger that, Core 1.
Set blessing over the settings.
Wallops on best source telemetry.
It is what it is.
T-minus 30 seconds.
We are down to 1.
Mark. T-minus 10. Mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we have ignition. And we have liftoff of the Ontario launch vehicle for the LA9 mission. We've got engines at full power with nominal latitude.
5,000 feet per second. Engines remain nominal at full thrust. Avionics systems still look good. Core pressures remain nominal. TBC looks good. Vehicle attitude is nominal. Just passing 100,000 feet altitude and 7,000 feet per second. Engines remain at full thrust.
I don't think that's happened yet. That's still the
Attitude still good.
But we should be able to see if it's
Avionics power is good. TBC steering looks good. Passing 150,000 feet. Engine steady as 100% thrust as we pass 10,000 feet per second. Core pressures remain nominal. TBC steering looks good and the vehicle still has a nominal attitude. Just passing 200,000
That thing
feet.
moved a lot faster than I thought it was going to go. Yeah.
We start the slow throttle ramp.
I mean, you see it on TV. It just looks like this slow motion kind of thing. But man, I think this was,
Attitude remains
My poor
nominal.
camera couldn't keep up. Let me think about it. Let me think about it. Okay, now.
well, you got some couple there.
Yeah.
Passing 15,000 feet per second. TBC slewing for main engine shutdown. Steady 75% power. 300,000.
So that's my long exposure right there. That's what it looks
Core
like.
pressures remain nominal.
All that
VNO 4 and VNO 5 open.
Yeah. It's like,
And we have
it's like a
Nico.
nuclear explosion.
Stage 1 separation. Storm activated.
Now, something happened right
Antares is in a brief coast phase now. We'll wait for the right conditions for stage 2 ignition. ACS is enabled. With nominal stage 1 burnout velocity, it's just over 17,300 feet per second.
Oh, not a problem at all.
We have fairing separation and interstage separation. And stage 2 ignition will be at T plus 260 TBC. And we have stage 2 ignition.
So it's asking the guy at the desk. Yeah, that stage 2 is
Stage 2 ramping up to full pressure. The Catch 30 motor will burn for approximately 150 seconds.
So what they do is this whole timing thing, like they wait.
Avionics power remains nominal.
Post.
Stage 2 attitude is nominal.
Waiting to then get it
Stage 2 TVC performance looks good.
because they can't really control.
Catcher 30XL motor is past its peak pressure at this point. Stage 2 burn continues. Avionics power remains nominal. Attitude remains nominal.
Two and then second station. I'm kind of afraid of that. But I think I exposed it.
Power systems remain good.
I think this will work. What do you guys
Stage
think?
2 TVC is nominal.
I got this in slow motion. Oh wow. That's not
That
bad.
is nominal. We're
Yeah, no, that is.
approximately halfway through stage 2 burn at this point.
I'm happy with the video. There we go. Ignition. Boom.
Avionics systems remain healthy at this point. Stage 2 TVC is nominal.
That's awesome.
All systems are performing well at this point. Power remains good.
I really wanted to get the plane just right.
Attitude remains nominal.
It's still lighting up the sky.
Yeah.
Caster 30XL motor pressure starting to tail off.
Pretty happy with
before payload separation. FTS is disabled. Power systems remain good. Vehicle attitude remains nominal as we wait for payload separation.
Yeah.
Stage 2 attitude is nominal. Avionics power systems all look good at this point. Power is nominal.
Well, you know, the one that I brought.
Yeah. My
Attitude remains nominal as we await payload
yeah,
separation.
I got that too. That's a solid time lapse, I think.
I think that's...
Don't you see it taking off?
Power is still good. Attitude is nominal.
Also, like how everybody was absolutely wrong. Which way was it gonna go? I was like, wait, no, go. You're supposed to go that way. Go that way. Go.
Hold on a light.
Attitude is good. Power
Much
is
better
nominal.
than anything I got.
Power systems remain healthy. And we have Cygnus spacecraft separation. Our CCAM maneuver is initiated. And in fond memory of Mr. J.R. Thompson, we wish Cygnus a smooth trip on the rest of their journey to the International Space Station.
I didn't expect to see the second stage. Like, clearly, I wasn't ready for that.
Launch checklist. Has pulse purging already started?
I think there's your
And
nautical twilight.
post-launch purging.
Okay, copy that.
Everything else today's gonna be so dumb.
So I just woke up from my post-launch power nap. Immediately after the launch, I went and filled up my vehicle, and then I was going to drive over to the NASA event, the post-launch kind of press op, but I decided to kind of just chill on the island until the traffic cleared. There was quite a bit of traffic there. And then I kind of pulled over and just realized, that I had stayed up pretty much all night. And so I decided that it was a smart thing to take a nap here. So I decided to do that. So just woke up. But, this whole thing has been so surreal. And I kept having to kind of dull down the experience and downplay, the importance of everything that was going on, and just, how cool it was that I was here being able to take part in this and all those things, because in not doing so, I wouldn't have been able to cope or handle the situation like I did. I feel like, I really kind of tried to take full advantage of it, and I asked as much questions as I could and just really tried to immerse myself in it. But, I didn't want to be overwhelmed at all. So at the same time, I really tried to downplay the whole thing. I got to shake an astronaut's hand this morning, came over and I was like, oh, I just touched space. Well, obviously not, because she hasn't touched space either, but that's what it felt like. You know what I mean? I felt like I was touching outer space. But the whole thing was kind of hard for me at the same time. I'm a pretty rough guy. I feel like I've been through a lot, and to come here and be placed in such a pristine environment, you know, I feel like I've had my freedoms taken away quite a bit, and it's hard for me. It's testing and trying to act appropriately in specific places and areas where I'm continually prompted to, you know, do things that I know I should not do. And a lot of that has to do with my upbringing, and a lot of that has to do with some of the experiences that I've been in, you know, just in the last little while. But I did a pretty good job at actually abstaining from all of those unconscious or those actions that I'm consciously aware of, and filtering them from my behavior or from my voice, so that what I was doing was appropriate. You know, it's tough for somebody who's been through a lot to kind of socially interact with everybody and other people that haven't, because a lot of those people that I'm comfortable with, you know, are very hardened, kind of battle-hardened individuals. They're warriors, and when you find yourself in a place where everybody else is not like that, it's very hard to connect with anybody, you know. And you're sitting there talking with people, and you can kind of tell just by having a conversation with somebody, you know, just the looks that they're giving and stuff like that, that it's the person isn't necessarily somebody that you would get along with. And I know that that's bad to initially judge somebody like that, but it just gets uncomfortable, kind of. And it's like I feel like they're kind of reading my whole story, and I'm really out there, and all of a sudden my whole self-defense mechanism kind of reacts, because that's just how I am now after having been what I've been through. I automatically kind of go into fight mode, where I feel like I have to kind of fight for my life. And I have a very kind of unique set of friends that know how to deal with me and handle me, but put me in a situation where it's this pristine, clean environment, and, you know, I have to deal with things and react with things in a certain way, and I can't do certain things, and there's walls in place, which, by the way, I hate. And even if I know I shouldn't participate in a behavior, just because society agrees that there should be a wall here, it almost makes me want to a certain degree, break through those walls. You know, just because they're up in place saying that I can't do these things, when in reality I just shouldn't, you know, do them. There's obviously severe consequences if I do them, but to say that I can't do them is kind of like taking away, I guess, me being able to express and really push life to the limits of what is actually possible and doable. And just a few other incidents where, you know, I just fought against kind of having to suppress myself. And now, you know, just simple things are a problem, whereas things that happened before obviously weren't anything really that serious or injurious to anybody or anything to that extent. But, you know, just because the situations got exacerbated way beyond, you know, the original thing that happened, put me through a lot of stuff to where, you know, it's caused me to kind of go into this fight or flight all the time, and to really try to seek to break out of the box whenever I see the box being placed around me. And yeah, you know, the whole thing was quite amazing. Watching that launch made me reminisce a little bit, kind of a nostalgic moment, because I built a lot of model rockets with my dad, and, you know, out on the farm, growing up as a kid with my grandma and pa, so we called my grandmother and my grandfather on my mother's side. Don't tell me that's wrong, because that's what they went by and that's who they were. But yeah, I used to just sleep outside on the big old farm and just kind of watch the stars, you know, just nothing quite like it. And I did have to clarify that you shouldn't correct me on what I call my grandmother and my grandfather, because I have had some very serious situations where people thought that it was a behavioral issue, that I was, I guess, referring to them by, you know, Pa and Gram. That's who they were. If you have an issue with that, then, you know, you should go out and behaviorally correct every single person until everybody calls everything the exact same thing. And eventually nobody will be able to see color anymore. Quite like, you know, it was displayed for us to see and witness tonight. You know, science is great in that it connects everybody to a singular moment and understanding, a pinnacle of truth, if you will. But there's something about, you know, even having opinion and truth that allows everybody to see a little bit of a different picture for the same event going down. And while I was on this whole event, you know, obviously I caught a glimpse of everything in the same sort of light that everybody else there did, but then also at the same point in time I kind of had my own little experience as well, and I'm grateful for that, and I am grateful for everybody else who got to experience that with me. So that's all I have to say for right now. I'm actually going to go and grab some breakfast and try and wake up and head up to Gettysburg. So peace out.
In 1 mile, turn left onto North 4th Street.
Here in Crisfield, Maryland. Supposedly, I was told pre-launch, kind of waiting for the countdown, by one of the locals that there's an island out here that supposedly speaks unchanged Elizabethan Old English. They've just been so isolated for so long that things out there haven't been affected by the progress of time like everywhere else has. So I'm gonna head out there. Got in contact with the ferrymen. They make kind of daily deliveries out there. It looks like they do a lot of crabbing out there and stuff like that. There's crabs all over the town. Little statues and paintings and whatever. So gonna go and check that out for first part of today. My post-launch party on Smith Island. So I went to the Chamber of Commerce on the mainland, and I was informed that this is just a major trading hub, really, for the communities up north and also down south. They had a lot of issues, I guess, after the Civil War when a lot of the slaves left the farms. They went to the metropolitan areas, and they couldn't afford to feed everybody that had all of a sudden migrated. And so they utilized a lot of shellfish to accommodate the needs of all the people. And supposedly, right over there in Crisfield, where we just came from, there was, you know, like a huge strip of just land that was just covered with the oyster shells that they would come and shuck and harvest and, you know, eat right there, and then transport and ship and everything like that. Just, you know, the roads were paved with oyster shells. And, you know, back in the day, I guess, they used to catch on the regular 8-inch in diameter oysters. Supposedly because there's, you know, the inlet from the ocean, and then you have fresh water converging with the ocean water. It gives just the right amount of mineral content to allow a very large and healthy population of crab and other, I guess, seafaring critters such as oyster. So there you go. I'm from Utah.
Oh, goodness. Okay, great.
No water. I think I was pretty boring myself.
I'm glad to be a Smith Armor. I lived here all my life except when I was in the service. And I come back here, and I've seen a lot of places, but I always want to come back here.
Well, here we go, Smith Island, Chesapeake Bay, Maryland, USA. The lady at the museum let me borrow her bike. Really, it's only 3 visitors here. I think it's just me and an older couple. Kind of some travel savvy, wayward, you know, golden year wanderers. So yeah, just kind of cruising around town. How's it going? It's quite lush.
looking for plants that would indicate how strong the weather is in the winter. Trying to see if there's anything that is here that would not necessarily survive if it was too extreme. Looks like they do get snow, more so than where I was down a little more south, like Chincoteague, Wattsville, Virginia. Really have no idea where I am going, boys. But it's nice out, it's good weather, so I don't really care. So that's what I'm gonna do. Looks like a lot of their trash is just burned here on the island. That building right there is a big old incinerator. It says Smith Island Incinerator on the front of it. And this landscape really reminds me kind of like Antelope Island area back home in Utah, the bird refuge and the nature conservancy designated land over there. It's quite a large amount and variety of birds here though. It's pretty neat. So I rode out here to the complete other side of the island. There's a boatyard right over there. And the water's taken on a different coloration over on these parts. I think I see where they process a lot of the crabs. There's a facility up here, and I think they might actually raise them to different stages. Try and keep them soft, is what they said. Because the crab can go hard, I guess, depending on the age and what it's exposed to. You'll see it right up here. And this seems to be one of the smartest buildings that I've seen on the island, or in this part of the country at least. Just up on some fairly high stilts. Been a lot of flooding down here as of late. And we're coming up on the processing facility. You're gonna see a lot of pods over here to my left. Processing stuff. There you go. Rhodes Point, Smith Island. Friendly community, really. I can probably connect with a lot of these people more so than a lot of other people. I mean, where I come from and kind of the environment that I've grown up in is really not too far off from something similar, just, you know, in a different environment, which means that, of course, the people are subsisting off of different things, which changes quite a bit, but enough as to where I can connect, you know, and I can look at them and say, I get it. So I'm enjoying myself here quite a bit. As you can see, this is probably the first time so far on my trip to the East Coast, the Upper East Coast, that I've been able to comfortably take off my shirt. And I definitely get a chance. I'm gonna take it. So, have a nice day. Smith Island. Now I gotta bike the 1.5 miles back, which on bike really is truck. So just a nice smooth road. You know, it almost feels like you're going downhill, but it's fairly flat. A lot of barges out there with some big old crane mechanisms on them. Look like they're loading some container units onto it. And you're gonna see a construction site kind of in operations up here. I'm not quite sure as to what it is that they're doing at all. I have no clue whatsoever. Really haven't asked anybody. Probably wouldn't be too hard to figure out what was going on, but I'll pan the camera over here in just a split second, give y'all a glimpse of what I'm talking about. It almost looks as though they're working on another dock or something. And you're gonna see coming up, there's actually a helipad. I'm guessing that this is the designated zone to land a chopper. I mean, they were saying that the only way on and off the island was with boat, you know, but choppers kind of don't obey the rules, right? I mean, a lot of this land is conceivably fairly easy to a chopper. So, yeah. Gonna make my way back now. I don't want to be late for departure and be stuck on Smith Island. Wouldn't be too bad of a misfortune, but it would definitely delay and possibly remove the experience of me seeing some other neat things. So gonna try and get back on time. It's just hard, you know, traveling anywhere is like that. It's like the longer you stay, the more you experience, you know, because with each day it brings new experience, and kind of everything has a seasonal experience to it as well. So, you know, being in a place for a long amount of time, you're really able to appreciate the change over time, and that carries a significant feeling with it as well. Not just, you know, spending a day or a few hours in an area. It doesn't do a lot of places the justice that it deserves. So yeah, but I'm gonna make the best of it and going to try and discover as much of that as I can wherever I can. And I'm kind of thinking that, you know, it's like, is it really even worth it to have the camera out? Because conceivably all of this is just good footage, you know what I mean? I should just walk around 24/7 live streaming like everything I do, because I try to just do stuff every day that's worth kind of sharing, you know what I mean? But sharing to a certain degree kind of gets in the way of me. And at other points in time, I actually feel as though it prompts me to do things in a more focused manner. So I'm not necessarily sure if it takes away from a lot of experiences, because there were definitely moments as I was going through the whole NASA ordeal that I felt as though I would have been somehow lacking some sense of focus or interest in regards to particular aspects of the whole event. But since I had a camera and I was specifically focusing on documenting the experience, I was more so aware and honed in with what was going on for a longer duration, and possibly even, you know, prompted towards exploring even more avenues because I had the motive of sharing it with other individuals. So you never know. And there you go, Smith Island. There we go, ball field. That's all you really need. if I had the money, I could see myself like staying in a place like this, possibly writing a book, just traveling all over and just kind of creating more of it. You know what I mean? So this is where I was recommended to go. The Dobbin House Tavern. Been here since 1776. Hello.
Hi there.
I like Pennsylvania. It has like a smell. It's a good one. Army of the Potomac, 3rd Corps. Artillery Brigade. The state of New York, in recognition of the services rendered by those corps, division, and brigade commanders at Gettysburg, not elsewhere honored on this field. Excelsior. So these monoliths are all over this area. There's a ton of them. I just got done talking with a couple. They're from Long Island, New York. And they're kind of history buffs. Most interested in war and battles that have been fought around the world. Not just the Civil War in Gettysburg, but they're here and they're familiar with the area. They've been here multiple times. You know, that gives you some sense of how much is here to see. He said there's over 1,300 monuments scattered across the entire area. So I'm gonna do my best. I opened up a map. I downloaded an app that's supposed to give you a GPS kind of audio tour guide with key points of interest, but I opened it up and looked at it and I was like, there's so much stuff here. So I was just gonna drive aimlessly around and figured I'm not gonna, you know, really miss anything. I'm gonna see something wherever it is that I go. But they told me that I needed to go definitely to the visitor center, so I'm gonna go and check that out. He said that there's a fantastic mural of Pickett's Charge that's over 100 years old, and it's a circular painting that, you know, paints a real picture of kind of just the feeling, the ambiance of what happened here. And he said it almost makes you feel as though you're there. So I'm definitely gonna go check that out. And here is a monument. Pretty fascinating. And as you can see, as you just scan the horizon here, it's just littered with statues and effigies and everything to that extent. Maybe I can sneak into this guy's little guided tour here for a minute and film some of this.
I grew up as a kid on my dad's desk, it's still there to this day, with a picture of my grandfather who's still alive, being held by my great-great-grandfather, pointing his name out on the monument, right here. And that is one handshake away from a Civil War soldier, folks. And my pap is still alive. Some people think this is ancient history. It's not that long ago. The last Civil War soldier didn't die until 1956. And of course, a lot of the problems we have in this country to this day come because of this conflict. Now, that leads me into the last part of our story here. On the third day of the battle, General Robert E. Lee was not quite done. He attacked both ends of the Union line. The ends were strong because he had been turned back. So if the ends are strong, where are they weak? Right in the middle. That's what he thinks anyway. On the third day of the battle, just before 3 o'clock in the afternoon, nearly 13,000 Confederates step out of the trees on the other side of the open field behind you in the famous attack known as Pickett's Charge. Some of them will make it all the way up to this ridge, but it was over in about 35 minutes. In that short space of time, almost 7,000 Confederates went down in those fields. Bloody failure for Robert E. Lee. Now, here's the one opinion I'm going to give you to this day, okay? Everything else was, for the most part, based in fact. Never let the facts come in the way of a better story. But I think that as Americans, we are the luckiest people in the world because we wake up every morning and most of us have no idea what it's like to live through something like this. You agree? Do we want to keep it that way? Yeah. So here's my request to you. I don't expect everybody to love history as much as me. If you do, you're cool. But the point of this is, when you get home, even if it's for 30 seconds, have a conversation with somebody about what you saw here. The more we talk about these things as a nation, as a people, hopefully the better job in the future we can do to keep something like this from ever happening again. And guess what, folks? People say it's not important to remind you of this, but they have never lived through a war if they say that. Who is the future? Yes. There's going to come a moment, mark my words, where each and every one of you are going to have to make decisions that are not only going to change your lives, but change the world. And hopefully when you're armed with this knowledge, when you learn about these things from our past, you can do a better job so that when that moment comes, it makes this place a better world. Okay? Exactly. Any questions? Yes. If there was a star next to them, it means they were killed or mortally wounded out there. Okay?
Just littered with names. Or I should say, treasured with names. I feel like, you know, the statement is just one, which means a multitude, but the word littered doesn't do what is here justice. Just a box full of treasure. Treasured with names. And supposedly you can walk up in this and climb and ascend the stairway and look out over the whole area here. I've stumbled into the middle of a tour, it looks like.
Just walk. Oh my god, this is so weird. I'm with me. Oh guys, be careful. Oh guys, be careful. It smells like copper. Give me an edge. Hi, go to the castle. Watch how many.
That's where I was, looking at that monument over there.
Ellie, it's raining now.
Made my way over here. I usually do my best to kind of exclude large groups like this because you never know when somebody's going to be offended or doesn't want to be on camera. But, you know, to a certain degree nowadays, you almost have to be comfortable with being on camera wherever you go, because if you weren't, you know, due to how flooded and saturated our society is and obsessed with filming and taking pictures of everything, if you weren't comfortable with that to a certain degree, or I guess acceptable of the actual fact that people are taking video and photos of you on a day-to-day basis, then it would be very likely that you wouldn't ever even leave your house, you know? Just kind of the accepted norm to a certain degree, especially with kind of very amateur situations like myself. But yeah. And sometimes it can add a sense of the experience, you know? I'm here, there's obviously bus tours going on. Fairly certain that that was a school-sponsored tour. So I'm at the visitor center now, and I'm starting to hear some foreign languages. Very reminiscent of being in a national park now. Just kind of the variety and diversity of everybody that's here just brings me to that sense of feeling. So we're gonna see what this is all about. See if I can hone in my language recognition skills here. I feel as though I'm pretty savvy with identifying the regions as to where people are from. I might pause here for a moment so that I can possibly eavesdrop on the language that's directly behind me. We can see if I can figure out what they're speaking. Go figure. They started speaking English right as they passed. Well, let's do it.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
So this is the southern uniform. This is the north. So going right.
So looking at the number of people that enlisted from the different states, I wonder truly how accurate of a picture this paints, because it seems as though they're coming to some very rigid numbers, you know, and very specific numbers as well. And just out of the knowledge of, I guess, my own grandfather, and we found his enlistment papers into the Navy to go to war, kind of really how many people actually lied about specific things in the papers themselves. And I can't help but wonder if there were a lot of people which crossed state lines, you know, and said they were from different regions or areas so that they could fight for a specific side. It seems as though there were indefinitely states that were supposedly all on one side. But to say that nobody ever crossed lines and went and then said they were from somewhere else to fight for a specific regime, I feel as though kind of gives us an inaccurate portrait as to how people actually think and behave in really dire and extreme circumstances. I mean, during the Vietnam War, people were moving all over the place and becoming vagabonds and nomads and pretty much gypsies, moving to different countries and whatever have you, lying about things to go to war, lying about things to not go to war, you know. But to a certain degree, when we're talking about history, we have to act as though this is the way things are, and it's a very stable and concrete picture, because if we don't do so, then we have nowhere to walk upon, as we're kind of just floating and meandering around in space in the gray area rather than the black and white of what we think actually happened. Life is just one big queue. We're all waiting for a turn, dude. Hello? So I just came out of the cyclorama and the little pre-video presentation that was given here at the Gettysburg Museum, and I can't help but come out of it with a few thoughts of my own. I mean, I've heard speeches by Lincoln which are in direct contradiction to how he is portrayed in a lot of these places, and historically by the books that we read and things to that extent. There's a lot of controversy surrounding the situation, but just like as I said before, war is not black and white. And to say that this war itself was only about black and white, right, I think does not necessarily do any justice at all to humanity, to the people involved. It directly paints a picture of ignorance towards specific peoples that were involved. And to say that there wasn't much more color in the entirety of the event is to do the entirety of the event injustice. I mean, the preview video that we watched before going up into the cyclorama presentation of Pickett's last charge talks about how a lot of men saw themselves superior to black individuals. Now, I'm not saying that that's not true, but I mean, one only has to look at the world today to know that there's a lot of white men that see themselves superior to other white men. And to say that that was something that wasn't necessarily going on back in those times as well would be to look at the whole encompassing experience of human life in a tunnel vision sort of sense, where we're not allowing ourselves to see our peripheral vision that's going on outside of where we're focusing. And our focus is directed towards the black and white aspects of a lot of things, and especially this battle here. Now, I think that the battle itself was almost to a certain extent one that was over aestheticism versus industrialization. I mean, it talks a lot about how the carbine overwhelmed the musketrymen of the Confederacy. And, I feel as though a lot of creativity and individual expression was lost in the Industrial Revolution. When we have interchangeable parts, all of a sudden factories pop up. No longer is the world regulated by the creative and passionate expression of an artist. All of a sudden things can be interchangeably exchanged hand to hand, but all of a sudden everything becomes just a 1 and 0 with the serial number. And a lot of the world today follows a lot of what happened here. I mean, I traveled clear across the country, and I step in a vehicle and I can drive around and I have no problems at all. So there's a lot to be thankful for, and a lot of these values and ideals spawn from the whole notion of unification and Lincoln's statement, "A house divided cannot stand." I mean, to a certain degree, I think that conflict actually holds things together. Know your friends well, but know your enemies more so. Or keep your friends close, but your enemies closer, right? Ultimately, our enemies are truly the ones that we know the most, because they keep us on our toes, and we study them more adamantly than people who just kind of blindly follow us and we would say are our friends. We're more intimately associated with that which we battle against, our demons, so to speak. And to say that through conflict, a very adhesive solution doesn't arise, I feel is to undermine a very rational and logical philosophy. The universe is this chaotic, expansive thing, and to say that the chaos doesn't actually proliferate the illusion of order or create a higher order, I feel as though kind of undermines the majesty of it all. And that's just a few things that were coming to my mind as I came out of this whole thing. And to say that slavery was actually abolished, I think is a fallacy. I don't think that slavery was abolished. I think that there were many people which were slave owners in the North during that time and now all over the world.
I think that the form of slavery in the South would have eventually become abolished as technology advanced, and maybe not, because maybe, as I was saying before, the Industrial Revolution kind of spawned and spurred on this whole technological advancement, which really would have done away with slavery as it was then to how the world is now with, robotic manufacturing plants and what have you. But who knows, maybe it would have actually become abolished on its own when technology arose in the North or whatever have you, maybe in the South, because like I said, the creative expression of an artist uniquely trying to capture his viewpoint of the world maybe would have spawned some technology or some form of machinery that would have done away with how things were. It's all about viewpoint, perspective, and experience, and really just kind of the nostalgia of your own passionate relationship with what you want to feel through your work, through your entertainment, and what you see and taste and smell in life. Now, I think that, there's a lot of other byproducts as well. We look at the European Union. I mean, it's a much more, I guess, communicative thing now than it's been in the past. And maybe the United States of America would be much more so like the EU if this event hadn't gone in the direction that it did, because, it connected all of these things together, and we have continentalism in place where, the entirety of a landmass should be under one rule and ideal and ideology and form of thinking, and it's kind of connected through this broad and vast centralized form of communication as we see today through technology and other things as well, as to where we can travel the vast expanse of the continent, and I can understand and speak with, and I don't have to speak tons of different languages. Sure, there are slang forms of things in isolated regions, but I can pretty much go and communicate with anybody anywhere. Whereas in Europe, the isolated development of people doing exactly what I said before, kind of their own form of expression and ideals and philosophies, and also due to the fact that they kind of arose in a very much less technologically advanced environment, so that they couldn't have been connected, and the population gene flow was very restricted, and so it allowed these isolated populations to grow up fairly close by our standards today, but fairly far away then, as to where we see just how diverse the actual EU itself is, and the United States isn't necessarily like that to a degree. I mean, there's still vast amounts of diversity, right? But the whole slavery thing, I think that slavery still exists. I mean, it's just taken on another guise, right? It's in disguise. There's slavery through corporation, through government policy. The two poles ironically kind of actually fall under a lot of the same criticisms, in my own opinion, in regards to taking advantage of individuals and situations, using force, using kind of, I would say, the fox's way, the guile and the sneaky pathway to trap people within words and within declarations and within law to a certain degree, enforced to a certain extent, through fear and through, I guess, the general use of another man to accomplish something for you through a treat that gives him no more but gives you much more, through the economical system. But like I said, I'm just trying to paint a picture of color here. I'm really a very compassionate person in regards to everybody. I think that there's a lot of diversity even within ethnicity, and to say that one people is all the same is to again do humanity a very great and non-deserving injustice.
products of Southern agriculture and salmon. Risks remain. But views on state and the meaning will remain hard.
Cannot abolish the government of the United States.
Reynolds, the ranking officer of the firm, makes a bold and momentous decision to force the battle here, west of town, in order to maintain control of the road network. Within minutes, Reynolds is dead. Through another exposed position. At 3:30 p.m.
Ironically enough, I almost feel as though the whole thing is a little more polarizing than it is unifying. But to say that there have been a lot of experiences that I haven't come to identify with, come to actually love and enjoy, if the things that I stated earlier hold to be true, and the actual domino effect of what occurred here created them, then to say that there's a lot of things that I have gone through that I haven't loved because of what happened here would be a lie. So, you know, it's just a very ominous kind of place. If I had to say anywhere that I feel as though kind of what the South was is still alive today, I would have to say Georgia. You know, you can go wander around in the woods there and come across some places that pretty much look like plantations still. You know what I mean? And how I said before, a lot of those things about slavery being abolished aren't necessarily true. Through the utilization of workforces today and wages and whatnot and what have you, people are pretty much restricted to live in situations very comparable to a plantation when you look at the black and white of it all, right? And we see how wage and area and all of these things can really kind of place you into a specific paradigm. If you go to Georgia, you're wandering around in the woods, you come across plantations still, you know, people are paid and whatnot and what have you, but it almost kind of is comparable to a certain degree in what you see and what you feel while you're there, because you're going around, you see a lot of people living in pretty, you know, backwoodsy type of situations. Something that, you know, we like to say isn't how people live in the United States. Something that you would expect to see in a third world country or what have you. And then all of a sudden, a clearing opens up in the woods that you've kind of been wandering through, and you just see this gigantic, immaculate mansion of somebody who's been hiding almost, you know, all of this wealth and whatnot, just statues coming out of the ground, shrouded in mystery, so to speak, because you don't know who these people are, but obviously they're extremely wealthy and whatnot. They maintain and control a lot of assets, power, wealth, and the driveways are just gigantic, you know, kind of roundabouts decorated with treasures you'd expect to see a king or a queen have kind of along the pathway of you gaining entrance into their not so humble abode, right? But you know, that's life. I'm from the West and brought my iPod out here with me, watched some Trigun, Badlands, the movie,
before the launching of the Antares rocket the other day from Wallops. And you know, the main enemy of the film, Gasback, was always ranting about how life is a struggle for resources, and he's robbing from these bankers and businessmen. And he says, you know, when I steal money from people, I like to look at the people I'm stealing from in the face. And it's this very Wild West kind of attitude, the feeling of all of that, and understanding that a lot of times things are just a euphemism, right? We're kind of indirectly telling ourselves that what we're doing is okay, when in reality things that have been spoken of in evil mannerisms of the past in actuality are what we're doing, but indirectly and through a euphemistic manner to make ourselves feel good about how we're operating. You know, people like to have a sense of what they're doing is right and just and for the common good, the common interest. To a certain degree, some people are outrightly selfish, and they justify their actions possibly by rationalizing how everybody's a thief, everybody's a backstabber, everybody's indirectly a murderer, causing suffering upon the masses, you know, enlisting and having slaves or an army or a militia governing over others and whatnot. But just a lot to think about, you know, a lot to take in. There's a lot here, and to say that you're able to cover everything, take in everything, express everything in a very understandable manner is incorrect. You know, there's a lot of people who probably will think that what I'm saying is garbage and makes no sense at all, and is coming from a very troubled mind who can't necessarily wrap his head around the realities of life and of the world. To some people it might make sense what it is that I'm saying. You know, I'm a very blessed person. I'm thankful for what I have, and I'm trying to do my best to share my thoughts with people while respecting that some people may disagree with my thoughts. You know, I'm just trying to experience everything in a positive note, knowing that if you speak of the devil, there he is in every situation. And so trying to see the heavenly nature and the angelic presence that resides within all things everywhere. You know, if we treat all ground as sacred and holy ground, then it is. So, you know, even through industrialization and pretty much digitalization, I think that there's much room, even though a lot of people find themselves being suffocated in certain environments, concrete jungles, what have you, cubicalized experience. I think that there's a lot of room, even in those very suffocating environments, for some, for creative expression and exploration, and also to create and enhance the human experience, you know, because we can't have an explosion of creativity without having a confined and designated and bordered space, because that's what it takes to create a bomb, is that pressure of such an environment. So yeah, I'm gonna continue my journey through Gettysburg. Going to try to kind of settle down a little bit and just kind of absorb everything and be in awe and wonder and amazement, because I think that when you are in those three things, you tend to kind of forget about trying to make sense of everything, and you're just able to appreciate it. Wilderness like this is just kind of unheard of where I'm from. I mean, there's greenery and foliage, you know what I mean, but it's definitely not as dense and as just covering, you know. There's a canopy here, right? I was telling some people that Pennsylvania almost reminds me of home to a certain degree. I mean, you know, I'm from Utah, but you drive up to Idaho, it's very hilly, lots of farmland and stuff like that. But then I told them, all of a sudden you see all the trees, and then you realize that no, you're not at home. And then every once in a while your vision becomes obscured from a distance, and it's unlike the big sky country out west. Where it's, you know, just kind of an odd place when you think about it. It's weird that kind of wherever you're at, you're able to see off in a distance from whatever point almost. You know, even within the city, there's towering structures that really kind of allow you to gain a sense of your position within it all. Even while being in some of the concrete jungles, the bigger centralized hubs for people to live and whatever, there's still landmarks, natural ones that kind of ascend beyond the men or man that have culminated in the region, that allow you to kind of see where you're at. And that's only in very limited areas. Everywhere else is pretty much just, you know, as far as literally the eye can see, you can see. But here it's not like that. The trees have started to change a little bit since I have came up north. Started seeing some pine trees. Everything else has been pretty much broadleaf until now. So it's kind of signifying the change a little bit here, you know, change in the environment, naturally houses within it, possibly a change in attitude, because you know what shapes our attitude is a lot of our surroundings, where we're from. I'm not saying that just because there's pine trees, obviously there's different people, but you know what I mean? If we look around the world, obviously different people that are from different places, that have different environments, are different people ideologically and physically. And that's how the animal and plant life just works. You know, they correspond with each other and they kind of grow along with each other. But as man kind of ascends past boundaries and borders, then kind of what is man, you know? As man is able to traverse where man is not from. Maybe man is the imaginative pinnacle of all things, as is shown in many archetype paintings connecting the human characteristics with those of deity. Wandering off in thought, just like I'm wandering through the woods here. Little tidbits of treasure scattered everywhere. All you gotta do is take the time to pick it up, you know, and eventually you've got a chest full of it. Just like picking up all that loose change, yo. Okay, there we were, right over there. And then we've made our way over that way through the bush over there is the visitor center. There's a cemetery that goes along that road, which is where I'm probably gonna go. I just kind of came up here to check out a few things before I head over that way. There's a pretty big monolith over there. Have to go and check that out. Major General George Gordon Meade, United States Army commander of the Army of the Potomac, born December 31st, 1815, died November 6th, 1872. So there's cannons pointed out that way. Still trying to get my bearings around these parts, you know? It's like, where were the opposing forces actually at here? It's like, you know, you gotta place yourself in the battle here and find your own bearings in the battle, you know what I mean? That's what we're all kind of doing, is where do I stand, right? In regards to everything that's going on here, but everywhere else as well. And that's kind of where you're gonna find yourself in life. You know, we gain our bearings and we stick to solid and firm ground as to what we think, otherwise we wouldn't be able to stand at all. You know, we just kind of be floating. So, call me an idiot if you are a buff at this stuff, but I see all the cannons pointed that way, so I'm guessing that the opposing force, if they've historically set this up to mimic the actual positions by the forces with historical accuracy to how it was during the actual event, then I'm just going to say that from the trees over there is where the regiments of the opposing forces came from.
No, James Harden. I'm the alumni director for Niagara. Oh. I'm a little purple eagle. But we still get 90 people.
Alright, so looking at the pictographic representation of the battlefield here, we are right here on the battlefield. The cannons that I was speaking of earlier are pointed over in that direction, which too is Emmitsburg Road. And we're looking out that way right now towards Pickett's attack.
And it's crazy because like the city of Niagara Falls has been like this.
So Pickett's attack came from
Argument of contention like for decades.
The direction over that way.
Multiple like regimes that go.
I'm still not sure where north, east, south is. I'm thinking that that's somewhat east. Based upon the fact that there's the monument that I was at earlier. And I had somebody tell me as I was looking off in a specific direction which way was north. It's like, where's the south? Where's the north? You know what I mean? It's like, I don't even freaking know. Which side am I on, dude? Because I don't even know where north and south is, dudes. I'm just here, boys. I'm just lost in space, dudes. Go figure. Just came from a freaking rocket launch. I don't know where the fetch I'm at, dudes, which means I'm not on any side, boys. Hard to be on a side when you don't know where you're at or where you stand. So I downloaded this app that allows me to view the battlefield through augmented reality, and it shows prominent sites and it overlays their position with a simple description you can click on and kind of look out over the battlefield and see what's going on. So right there we have the Lutheran Seminary, Oak Hill, Gettysburg Town Square is that direction. Keep turning over here, we're going to find Culp's Hill. And if we keep on going this way, we're going to eventually see DC off in the distance, which means that that way is south. And so if we keep on turning clockwise here, we're going to see that Pickett actually came from the west. So they went up and tried to flank, I guess, the position of the Northmen. And, you know, now we can kind of click on some of these little
things here and see what they say and get a little bit of a better feel for what actually happened. Erected by the Congress to commemorate the services of that portion of the Army of the Potomac, composed of cavalry, artillery, infantry, and engineers of the regular Army of the United States in the Gettysburg Campaign, June to July 1863. It's a constant restoration effort. I spoke with somebody that's been to the area quite a number of times here, and they told me that a lot of the upkeep and maintenance of the site is actually done more so by volunteers, friends of the monument, rather than an actual organization set up. I mean, eventually it's become an organization, right? But there is actually a government institution, the Parks and Rec Department, which is supposed to be given charge or in charge of, you know, maintaining and with the upkeep of the site and the structures. You know, there's a lot of wooden stuff here which obviously rots away and whatever with the weather. But he was telling me that they really don't have that much money, so a lot of the maintenance work is done through volunteer work. People that volunteer to be friends of the site, I guess. I saw some signs that said become friends of the site, you know, and donate now or whatever. I'm sure there's a multitude of organizations, government institutions, and private companies and whatnot that donate, dedicate, and are highly involved in the upkeep. And there we have him, the enigmatic figure himself. 77 years ago. Some of the most famous lines in American history. If man was afraid to walk on grass, we would have gotten nowhere, folks. And I could climb a fence, but I really would like to not push my luck here, you know? So. You know, I can't help but talk a little bit more about being free and finding freedom while I'm here in this place so connected with the concept itself.
You know, sometimes I feel as though having less gives us more. You know, you can be poor but rich. And just a prime example of that being people that really don't have large estates and other things, to a certain degree, have less responsibility, and you know, they have less of an obligation to time, to schedule, and in doing so they are much more free to meander, to wander, to actually own more to a certain extent, because they have to upkeep what they say they own less. And so, you know, somebody with a lesser household probably would say that they're out more, experiencing the world, and you know, to a certain extent the world is kind of their home, and they aren't obligated to maintain, and they aren't kind of a slave to time and these other concepts, and so they have more, right? I mean, there's always ways of twisting some sense of being or lacking what we think others have that we don't into a form of an advantageous situation for ourselves. You know, and I could most definitely talk up the advantages of being somebody of wealth and of having more physically and things to that extent. You know, but life's all about that. Life's all about kind of taking the situation, the hand that you're dealt, and making the best of it. You know, people that have a lot, obviously they have money to travel. They have a lot of things that can take you places. I say that, you know, somebody who lives in pretty much a wiki-up structure, the whole world is their oyster, right? But to a certain degree, it takes assets to be able to trade. It takes goods that other people want. It takes a community and civilization connected by ideals and ideas of common interest that not only give things value, but allow us to gauge value in exchange for services that allow us to travel, to experience, to see. And the only thing that we truly have at the end of the day is experience itself. You know, and everyone's fighting for that. Everyone's fighting for the right to have that experience. And it's extremely hypocritical to say that your way and your experience is more justified than somebody else's. But you know, it's human nature to justify our own pathway of existence and of experience, because this is all we know. You know, beyond myself, I know nothing. I cannot necessarily truly know somebody else without actually being them. And so that being, we're all doing our best to identify with other people and other things so that what we have, we can enjoy, because if it was gained out of harm for something, we have sympathy, we have empathy, because we ourselves understand that at times we can experience the pain and the harshness that life has to offer at times. And we can see the hand from which it was dealt. And so to deny the right for another to fight for a good hand and for a cause, but for that side to not look out as well and see that they themselves are fighting for the best hand. And then all of a sudden this becomes a huge political argument over forms of distribution and government of wealth and goods and of time and of energy. And I dare not go down that road today, because that is the song. Washington, D.C. getting washed out here, you know what I mean, boys? Heading to that big ominous pointy steeple building you can see off in the distance, ascending above ever so slightly, directly in front of us.
That will be my first stop here in DC. I definitely feel like I'm in a cathedral. Looks as if they're having some sort of formal event that will be taking place. Got a lot of the devil's firewater over there, though. Want to have a little fun while in church, you know what I mean? You can burn from the inside out with some Fireball whiskey. Right in front of the Lord and Savior, the sun's glory will burn you to cinder. Hello? With the purity of his light. Just the other day, I saw somebody catch flame right here. Burn. It was miraculous. I feel like I should stop polluting this footage with just my commentary, which is in fact nonsense. Oh, I do me. This is such a grand old building. Whoa, check that out. They might even have a laser show, dude. Are they gonna have a rave in here? What kind of party did I stumble upon? I mean, I know that even the devil himself shows himself inside the cathedral to be not so metaphorical in nature. I mean, there are obviously paintings and portraits and depiction of Satan, such as, you know, the Archangel Michael defeating the son of the morning, as it were. I'm lighting this candle for all you wayward sinners that need to come into the light and the glory. Purification and sanctification may hurt at first as you destroy who you once were, but in the end, the sanctity and through the repentance of the Holy Lord Jesus Christ, you will behold a life not ever before beheld by you until you forsake your old sinful ways. And the Lord and Savior manifests himself before you. That candle was for all of you, so that you could know of the life that awaits you and It may sting at first to purify yourself by his light, but in the end, you will be glad you did, as you are welcomed and embraced in open arms by the loving souls awaiting to catch you as you fall with the grace and forgiveness of the saints and of their leader, the one and only Savior, Jesus H. Christ, will allow you to see. For once you were blind, but now can behold the majesty and glory. I think I might try and sneak in here, go to this rave party of really important peoples, try to partake in the good things of the life, because I'm all about eating, most importantly drinking, and being merry till the end of my days, because lo and behold, we shall die. Tomorrow. I would burst out laughing right now, but I feel as though the echo that I would create would most indefinitely arouse some sort of personage to kindly escort me in my non-observant self off the premises. Really though, you can't help but be in awe and wonder at kind of the sheer magnitude of the architecture more than anything. That's why I came here. I love the feeling, I love the gothic nature of everything anthropologically, and the ambiance is definitely worth coming to experience, whether or not you are a religious person of any faith. I feel as though things of this nature and extent hold a significant value of their own, and obviously that feeling is utilized for an agenda and for a purpose, but to totally be something that is so bitter as to not enjoy the spectacular nature of construction and of community and of a common goal and interest and of, the songs sung so full of emotion, and to see kind of the spirit or attitude of the people direct their hands towards construction. Such a marvelous thing would be to deny yourself an indulgent pleasure that everybody should experience at least sometime in their life. You know, that's kind of what forms every building, is the spirit of whoever's constructing it, or their beliefs and viewpoint of the world. It's going to be kind of reflected in the structure that's raised. I could live here. Of course, I might do a little bit of redecorating. I might make the font a little bit bigger so that I could possibly have a pool party. Multiple people can come unto the Lord at a single time and wash away the sins and the demons, as it were, you know what I mean, with the cleansing powers of the waters of Christ. As we all enjoy each other's company, for man shall not eat bread alone, right? What's up there, dudes? Before we exit, let's go through this door that says do not enter, employees only, private entrance. JK, it's open. Nothing not telling me to, except for there is actually a sign. I mean, I really do not want to be held somewhere against my will, so I will not force my will where it is not wanted. Holding somebody accountable to my will. Wish I could have went in there and done a little money changing. That'd have been nice if I could have gotten a few things to share the sacred spirit with the passage of some monetary funds beholding the face of that which is not of this. That's where they keep all the really cool stuff. been playing too much Dark Souls. I feel like I need to tap on the wall somewhere and have it become walk-throughable as to where I can behold some treasure that was previously unbeknownst, giving me powers with which I previously could not have imagined, allowing me to conquer both the demons within and the demons manifesting themselves externally to my being by reading sacred prayers such as, "He revives my soul and guides me along right pathways for his name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You spread a table before me in the presence of those who trouble me. You have anointed my head with oil, and my cup is running over. Surely your goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." I mean, whatever does it for you. Listening to AC/DC allows me to overpower dark times more than that, but it's all fine and good. Okay. Walking up a nice dark little pathway here, everybody, into a door. Into some graffiti. Did anybody write anything worth reading? Well, this person took the time to inscribe right here, and it said, "Absolutely no one answered." Take that however you will. Oh, man. Nothing downplays dramatics like a little humor. Even more so, humor that isn't even humorous. I don't even know where I'm at, dude. I just walking into that girl's like something photos, trying to stay out of them. She's a freaking bombshell, dude. Just a silent siren. If any of y'all get what I'm throwing. You catching me, boys? You gotta stay away from them sirens. Alright, I think I know where I'm at now. But there she blows. Casting a shadow as bright as the light that it creates. You know, just getting here from Gettysburg, still having all of that fresh on my mind, you see a license plate and it says no taxation without representation, and it makes you realize just what was really going on. The people that were looking at other individuals that looked different than them didn't even identify them as something intelligent or of a human nature, so much so that they were denying them the basic rights that they held themselves so near and dear. You know, no taxation without representation. If we get to the heart and the core of the word itself, taxing, we can visually see an enterprise of committing ourselves to something of a heavy labor, physically demanding. That was a very taxing thing that I just did, right? And so the people were being heavily taxed, and what we see is that what was going on with the early colonialist settlers was actually being done here as well. But it was in actuality pretty much just a socio-economic byproduct of a higher standing, pretty much denying the basic human rights that were all granted. Just like the royalists were denying the colonists the rights because they were seen as, you know, just the ones to go over and procure goods for the people in power back where they came from. And then that's why we have the revolution. Now, what went on would certainly be classified by my standards as a revolution, right? And also it makes you think truly as to what it is that we ourselves today might possibly think as not as intellectual as ourselves, and we are denying the basic rights to things because we are classifying them in a lower standard or having less of an intellectual capacity to understand and feel. And if things don't feel, then therefore it doesn't matter what we do to them, because feeling is what grants life, right? If things can't understand and can't intellectually process what is going on, they have no sense of feeling, then we don't treat them as living. And so it is okay for us to abuse the rights of these things. What is it that we might possibly be doing this to today? You know, if this is something which was such an argued thing really not that long ago, in a sense justifying the actions of those that were in participation. You know, it's a complex thing, just as I was saying before. A lot of people, especially back in the day, we take way too much granted for how it is today. You know, I can easily access information and learn. Well, back in the day, the only exposure that certain people would have had to specific individuals would have been all they would have known. They wouldn't have known anything else of anybody else or what somebody could possibly be. And a lot of people grew up in an environment which probably gave the classification that others gave them a very warranted classification, because they grew up in an environment which didn't allow them to be anything else other than the stereotype. And in so doing, the stereotype held true because it was like this feedback loop of creating the stereotype, because that's all people knew and that's how people were being conditioned to be. And so you have people thinking a certain way in regards to another people's, and to say that it wasn't true isn't looking at the full picture, because to a certain degree, when you have a very, I guess, a very educated portion of society and then a very uneducated portion of society, you know, it's easy to say that they are, in essence, different peoples.
And genetically, populations actually do drift away from each other because you have certain individuals commingling for so long of a time, which in essence does create a separation and a categorization scientifically as well as through opinion. But not understanding the base nature of creating something out of hate is where I feel a lot of this went wrong, and not understanding that giving somebody an opportunity to change is out of pretty much the line that we're taught in regards to all moral action and ethical thought, right? Second chances is what it's all about, because if you're not somebody that is willing or capable of giving second chances, then you're likely not to see anybody ascend to a higher peak than where they fell from. And in so doing, you're actually disallowing yourself to be a better person by not allowing others to correct the mistakes that they've made. You know, I'm coming here, and the sole reason for which I came out to this region of the world was because of NASA and a rocket launch. Something that should teach us all that, you know, we should be given multiple chances to redeem ourselves, to ascend higher, because the organization, after walking through the facility, you know, you learn that the first launch wasn't successful there, and many other launches after that. You know, multitudes of launches. It's not just about second chances, it's about chances beyond the second chance, right? The only way in which a person or humanity itself can gain any sense of accomplishment or success is only allowed due to the grace of other individuals kind of forgiving us for the mistakes that we've made. And in so doing, we're allowed just a glimpse, a shimmer of success and of hope as well, because in knowing this, you know that all you are is pretty much a walking mistake, and it's only because other people are willing and allowing to accept you for being so that you are allowed to be, or allowed to progress, or allowed to enjoy any sense of accomplishment whatsoever. Just returned to my rental vehicle. Kind of gonna hoof it here for the final leg of my journey here in DC. Kind of what I've been advised to do from a friend who lives here. So just got my car turned in, and now I'm waiting for my Uber to take me to the hostel that I'm staying at. Booked this one through Airbnb. The hotels in Gettysburg were actually cheaper than the Airbnbs. The Airbnbs were kind of like an odd thing that were going on there. They were like historic mansions, like colonial mansions. And it was all like, come and stay here and get the feeling of staying in a Civil War era mansion, you know, and all the decor and the bedding and everything like that was up to standards with what an army general or something like that would have lived in, you know, and they're on immaculate plots of land and everything like that, and they were upwards of $200 to $300 a night. And so I went and stayed in a little shanty, you know what I mean? But it ended up being a pretty nice little gig. The hotel dude, front desk, led me on to some pretty sweet spots, so glad, you know what I mean? Overall, I'm satisfied with what ended up happening up in Gettysburg. So now here in DC, see what this is all about, and I have a feeling that it's going to be good as well. So all right, so
Just gonna Uber to the hostel. To give everybody some frame of reference, let me just kind of zoom out, get a different perspective on things for a minute here. And this is where I'm at. Made it to the hostel here in DC. You can't actually be in close proximity in regards to where you're from or live to actually be able to stay here. It's co-ed. It's like being at summer camp, but it's spring and it's wet here in Washington. So I'm actually gonna go out and feel my way around. They want it to come down?
You'll see a lot of them.
Well, they like want to like tear it down?
Because there are some that are controversial.
Do you care if I'm filming?
No, I mean you get my voice.
Yeah, that's cool. They're controversial, so it's just like all the statues, like the whole thing going on down like in the south.
Yeah, Charlotte, South Carolina. There's, I mean,
you know what? There's like some of that's political, but then some of it's just like buildings come down too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like let's move on and like we can build something else, people. But
I say put them in museums. I say don't get rid of them. I say if you are going to take them down, don't throw them away. Go put them in museums, and then people can go learn about them.
Yeah.
So there is currently actually you came at a good. Okay, you're thinking about Tom Cruise's butt.
Tom Cruise wears butt implants, everybody, to make himself look bigger, like the White House. It's really not that immaculate, but it is fascinating.
These people have been sitting here forever.
Doing what? Just protesting? Protesting just the presidency or the cabinet or what? Or?
One lady, I mean, I don't know if it's this way. There is one lady who her daughter was murdered, and they never like. I don't know, it changes.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff. It's probably hard to keep up with it.
Oh, they don't let you go any closer. Usually you can go. Gosh. So this one is free Tibet.
Free Tibet?
Yeah.
Okay, from China? Okay, that's been going on for a long time now.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. The protest sitting here changes. Whoever sitting here usually changes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So this is the backside. This is where they greet all of the like ambassadors and any foreign diplomat or like foreign
Executive offices.
Right there. Dwight D. Eisenhower Executive Office Building. It's really beautiful. It's one of my favorites.
Have you been in a lot of these?
I've been in a few of them, not all of them. I just meant the facade is beautiful.
Oh yeah, that's neat. The architecture is amazing. Oh yeah, wow. Especially when you get it from right here.
At night, it's very beautiful. I mean, you appreciate it in the daytime too, but that's why I'm giving you the night, and then you can go see it in the daytime and compare.
Okay, yeah. Cool.
So yeah.
That is the executive office. So that's where all your most
neat building, guys. Something's in there. Okay, and that's the...
This is the Washington Monument, but we're gonna go down here because this is the White House, but we have to go the long way. We have to go all the way down to come back up because there's not like...
Yeah, how many acres? Like
You're asking the wrong person.
There's a lot of land, everybody. It looks like it's just like a house with a perimeter, but there's a big perimeter around it.
I would Google it. I'm sure Google or Wikipedia has
It's on Google.
I'll show you some videos.
Jeopardy is filmed in the Red Cross. Sometimes in the Red Cross.
Red Cross building.
Building. The Red Cross building.
Okay, we have to press one more than we can walk. So,
I mean, this alone is worth living here, you know what I mean? Just to kind of...
It is, and you know, I did get afraid because the sun's coming up over the horizon looking at this is beautiful. So while you're filming that, I'm going to tell you a story.
Okay.
So do you see, well, I don't know if you can see it right now in the dark, but in the light time when you come tomorrow or whenever you come, you'll see that it's pink rock versus gray rock.
Okay.
So they started to build it, and what happened was the war started. So they needed the rocks and the stones from the quarry for the war, and so they had to stop. So that's why it's gray. And then when it finished, they got, I think it was a donation, or they had to go to another quarry and pick out stone, and it ended up being a pink stone. So that's why it's half gray, half pink.
Got it. Neat. Or was it because they were like out and were weathered?
No, it legitimately, they like
Just a
ran
totally different rock.
Yeah.
All right.
You'll see it in the daytime, it's better. I mean, you can kind of see it right now.
Like, where does it start? Is like the third of the way up, or what?
Do you, can you
I can see like a white spot, like right in like the bottom part.
So that's where it stops, and then it goes up pink.
Oh, okay.
And then it, as of September of last year, or maybe even August.
Zoom in.
It might be him. Actually, I can
Just,
look at his calendar.
oh man, that would be just him. I could just see him like his hands on the edge, just looking out, dude. You know what I mean? With like a look on his face.
Yeah. They
Oh,
he runs around in his robe just watching Fox News. And
Here.
I don't even get it that close. You can check his calendar. He might not even be here. Let's look.
I don't know. Yeah.
Can take you to Jefferson. There might be. Oh no! I need to take you to the. Oh. There's so much for you to see here. Oh, back to Holocaust Museum.
What were you gonna say? How many bullets are in a clip, or what? This is it. We're listening to Dan Carlin. Do you know who that is?
Yes, I do know who Dan Carlin is.
Oh, okay, cool. I love him, actually.
Yeah, it was right. World War II movement. It says it right there. Not on that, on this wall. Let's go find Utah for you.
I think World War I.
Do you want to find it, or do you want me to tell you where it is?
All of a sudden.
Want a picture under it?
Do I want a picture of it?
Like the view under it? No, you're not into that. Well, you can get this then.
Like a month at the most. But I get hateful stuff.
It came between states. Like in order. So like Delaware obviously was the first, then New Jersey, Connecticut, blah, 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 down. Literally like as to your ankle.
Oh,
if you could see it in the daytime, you could see the bottom. It's not very far.
The square will just be filled?
Yeah. This is also a beautiful view. That's why it's called the reflection pool.
Oh, because you can see the whole thing come down the... Alright.
It's prettier up there too.
You can probably see the point of it on the other end. So there he is, sitting, watching over everything. His union. right? There's such like a, I mean, like walking up to it, it's like, it's intimidating almost, you know what I mean? It's like, it's the manifestation of the ideologies. Preserved almond. My butt is so what? Just an old church.
I'm sure you could zoom in and it'll say.
It's alright. So this is the other side of the building here. Kind of the front entrance. Nito burrito. Crossing the bridge.
That over there is the Jefferson, John F. Kennedy, like performance theater.
Oh, okay. So just ended my first night ever in a hostel, and you know, you have to be a very comfortable person with sharing your space and dealing with kind of the eccentric behaviors of other individuals, but it can be a very rewarding experience at the same time. You know, I just had a engaging conversation with somebody from Atlanta, with somebody from India, and then somebody who's lived in DC for, you know, a time as well. Gave me some little tips and pointers as to where to go and how to act and all that good stuff. So really it was nice. I mean, I had to kind of deal with people coming in pretty late and waking up pretty early, so you got to be able to handle and deal with that. But after, you know, going through college and all that jazz, I mean, I've learned how to deal with a band in the next room, to me, kind of staying up all night, smoking and playing music, to skateboarding in the house, to cheerleaders above you, and people that do exercises in the room next door, and, you know, sleeping in a rickety bunk bed with your brother for an extended period, all within like the last, I guess, 7 years or whatever, you know. So yeah, I mean, pretty comfortable with it all myself. So you're kind of gonna get out of the experience what you put into it, you know. If you're somebody that kind of goes and ostracizes yourself, then that's what your experience is gonna be. You're gonna feel ostracized and a little out of place and uncomfortable having to share all this space with everybody else. It's like a small little community to a certain degree. They hold activities there and all this stuff. And then, you know, you have to respect the fact that everybody there is an adult and they all have their own incentives and things to that extent. You have to be a little bit trusting, a little bit on guard, and kind of respect the fact that people are going out and doing things on their own behalf, and, you know, people have obligations and people are willing to share stuff. People are going to keep guarded about stuff, and then keeping all of this in mind, but at the same point in time acting naturally and fluid with the whole experience. Really, just acting and being yourself is the best way to be, because people can tell when you're putting up a front, a facade, and not necessarily being true to who you are. And then once that's
go to these elevators.
Yeah, but I want to take the stairs. So I kind of pull around.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually put my stairs.
Stumbled upon a line of food trucks here. It's my lucky day, folks. But none of them look, maybe they're open? Yeah, alright. Cool. It's my lucky day. Don't be so quick to take back your luck. You know what I'm saying? Let yourself luck out every once in a while, folks.
Conflicted solution. The rule of law to impose a sanction on personal interest in favor of a common belief. The will of the hand behind the motion of the pen, directed by those that make up the body. An heir sits upon the throne that is breathed by anyone with breath. The city weeps with judgment, housing many houses. In the swift storm of remorse, manna falls from above, giving light, for with which things can grow. The unspoken rule, ruling, bringing harsh consequence upon those who would break it. A necessity to allow the connection of diversity present, an ever-changing equation with conflicting solutions to the problem of experience, all brought to the same one, creating a collection of shallow pools brought low with an arrogance of importance, fed by a few deep wells, like a mother protecting their bliss of innocence.
That's the only thing there, but other than that,
tank tops or something. The Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception. What an entrance.
Catholic University of America? Is it over there? All these buildings.
Huh. Such a powerful organization and influential.
I don't put a shade here. Since nobody else is.
Yeah, I mean, church sometimes can be like a very social place, you know what I mean? So.
But I mean,
Yeah.
Francis? All right. I said that very.
That was his throne, or his chair.
Yeah.
And then this one is Pope John Paul II. I think this is the one that Matt. No, he was that one. He was at the back here. So he got to the same place.
Reverend Thomas J. Shahan, double D.
Oh, because he founded this. Because there's the
Our Lady of Lavang. Okay, yeah. The gold. Oh, hey.
Oh yeah, the lady of Wonka is in Portugal where they the three shepherds fought at the Virgin Mary. It's Portugal. It's the, or no, it used to be the capital. Now it's just the holy city. I don't want to bump my butt right into you.
Oh, you're fine. Push me out of the way before you get ran over by a trolley, please. She was just gonna let me do my thing.
I mean, you do look like.
I mean, really, the only. What I was gonna say is I have spent a significant amount of time like with Native Americans and stuff like that. Like,
How are you?
when I was at SUU for like the 4 years.
These plants for medicinal purposes, but no one's keeping a record of why, how much, what plant, that sort of thing.
Oh,
as much as you could about all these different herbs that you could find and say, I'm going to put this all into one volume so people can look at this and say, if you're referencing this herb or you're looking for this ailment, something to treat this, you can kind of use this as a reference guide. He was one of the first people to kind of put that in a volume in that way. It's like stomach discomfort or like aids in digestion. Sometimes it's like sores of the mouth. It's like when you read it from his point of view, it's very
like the
ailment it's old world.
The...
They don't have these very specific things to say, oh, this is this disease or this is this kind of like medical condition going on, because back then it was like, oh, my stomach hurts or my thumb is aching or one of those kind of things. So it was like
kind of, well, isn't that kind of how some medicines were like
then your body just kind of gets out of whack and doesn't be able to do it. But a lot of medicine, as you were saying these days, is they'll find something, a plant that helps someone with a certain type of ailment. So they say, okay, what is the most active ingredient in this plant? So if it was like, oh, if I have an upset stomach or I have heartburn and I take that Greek oregano and it fixes it, and they say, what's the main thing that's helping your heartburn? So then they isolate that one thing from the plant, and then they make that the medicine. You say, well, there's a lot more going on in this plant than one particular element or one vitamin or one protein or something that causes your body to have this reaction or start this other process, metabolically. And once you start putting that without the balance of the rest of the plant as well, your body starts going, well, I have a bunch of this, but the other side of it's kind of missing, so I've either got to then make up for it somehow, I've got to compensate for it, or something else down the line is going to be out of balance.
So my OChem professor would always go on these spiels about the pharmaceutical industry being fairly corrupted, because he would say that it manipulates people into thinking that they're getting something they can't get elsewhere. And he would also say that a lot of times it is made illegal for people to harvest or own or grow a lot of these plants themselves.
Right.
Do you think that
I
a lot of that
think
is correct?
There's a lot of accuracy to that statement, and it's a challenging thing to break down and kind of put in a box, because there's so many elements to that.
Yeah.
And to a degree, he is, some people he's 100% right. And it's once they find something that they can sell to you, they don't want you to be able to grow it for free, because then they can't sell it to you anymore. So their power and their business and their control, that influence that they have then becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And what do we know about men with power? All they want is more power. So once they have that, it's going to be really hard to get them to give that up. The other side of that equation is, let's say you're a person who really does just like working with plants and is trying to find these new medicines for people, and say, I know that this plant has some really great compounds in it, and I would like to figure out a way to create something that then I can, give to people or show people that they can, find this or create this on their own.
Yeah.
The incentive and the cost that it comes up with to do that is time and money for someone to do that research, to come up with something or to discover something within something else that's new or improved, or then become something that we learn more about that says, okay, now for hemp, for instance, with CBD oil and things like that, they're, as many people have known for a long time, like, yes, this thing is just, it's like a crossing guard for your body. It directs the traffic. So it, all the things you have, whether good or bad, it goes, okay, how's your body doing as a whole? What do you need? Where do you need it? What do I have to work with? Okay, based on what I have to work with, let me send this out to where you need it the most, so that your body can do its own natural processes as efficiently and healthily as possible. But to create that, someone, the motivation for that is not always just, I want to be a good person and give it all away. Or even if you do, there's a cost to learn these things, or really be able to prove it to the point where we know that if I give you this will help you. To recuperate that cost, or to kind of protect the interests of these people who are doing that, is a lot of the reason why patents and trademarks and things come out, because they say, if you are willing to take so many years of your life and so many of your own dollars to put towards this effort, then it'd be nice if you know that when you come up with something that is successful or works in some way, that you're going to be able to at least recoup some of those costs that you put out.
I mean, the whole thing can go down a line of thinking of capitalistic incentive creates innovation more so than a philanthropic-based society, because what motivates people to pursue new avenues? It's them given the opportunity to have a better life, which is provided with the compensation of capitalism. So there's a lot to ponder and think about,
Sure, absolutely.
The creeping juniper, Taringo crabapple, and the other guy.
We're gonna go see the American ones, and we'll go see the Asians.
These trees are so expensive. To get like a bonsai like this?
No, yeah, it's expensive. They take hundreds of years.
Oh yeah, like generationally, Sergeant Juniper.
You tell the juniper by the miscoloration of the bottom. They'll behead you.
Yeah.
You're in their land.
Oh, like coming out of the trunk?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's faces and stuff, yeah.
Well, some of them will say like dragon, and you'll see like they've shaped the bonsai to be like a dragon. You'll see it's in the actual Chinese, I think, section. We're in the Japanese.
Which is just another branch of Chinese. Ba-dunch.
Thank God.
I just had to add that first sound effects of the video.
Okay, thanks. For the video. Do it for the video. I guess it didn't really work because I was trying to do it for the bomb.
Oh, you're fine.
Oh, look at the leaves on that one. It's different.
They're like waxy.
Yeah, well, they're like a kaffir line. I can't touch it, but oh, look at their like little. What do you call it? I don't know.
It's gonna like you're gonna touch it and it's gonna like the Pillsbury Doughboy. Teehee.
Like knives, like sharp edges.
Serrated.
Thank you. Words, they're really hard to pick. It needs a tropical climate, like environment. They always close it all around. Why would they face it this way? This is the point to be. Kind of far away.
The guy?
Yeah.
He has his back turned on the world, that's why.
That's what I said. You missed that whole beginning I just said.
Oh, did you say it was like part of his philosophy?
Yes, that's what
okay.
I just said. It's probably on purpose.
Oh.
And say philosophy, I said maybe it's on purpose.
Oh yeah, he's doing his own thing.
For the fact that, I mean, I think that he is.
A visionary?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of erosion that's happened, but you know, there's still enough intact that you can make out what the general idea is here. National Grove of State Trees. See that? You know what I mean? You just like drove past it in the dark.
Scary.
Yeah, this is cool. I mean, that's with all things, you kind of just become desensitized.
What's the word I was looking for earlier when we were talking about
Like literally just manufacturing torpedoes.
No, it's actually like an art. Like you get to meet the artists are sitting in there doing their art.
Oh, it's not like it's not like a torpedo factory.
Well, it's called. There is a torpedo in there.
Okay.
But it's just named after torpedo. Yeah.
Is there like a ward?
Well,
I don't
that's
know.
what we're on right now. I mean, I can take you to the DC ward. I never know. Okay, so over there is where we're gonna go. That's the National Harbor. It's the Gaylord Hotel. Is that big glass one?
The Gaylord?
Hotel.
Okay.
You never heard of that? Have you been to Nashville, Tennessee?
No.
Oh, it's a family name.
That's all.
Not the same.
That's what
but
comes to
yes.
mind when you say that. Smallest house on the East Coast.
It's called the Spite House because he did it out of spite.
The Spite House. To spite his neighbors. To spite the city and the government and everybody except himself. And he revels in his triumph of spiting others. Pretty neat house. Quick Draw McGraw. Is that like Philip Regis or whatever his name is? Who's that guy? Who's the? Oh yeah.
The Who Wants to Be a Millionaire guy.
Oh
and
yeah.
goes on Regis and-
Whatever happened to that guy?
I'm sure he's retired. He's old.
It's like weird. There's like people that are like definitive moments in my life, like him. But it's like I don't even know this guy. But it's like he was such like a character on
He's
television.
a household name.
Yeah.
He's very much a household name. That's how people feel about Bill Cosby.
Yeah, and it's like I don't even know this guy, but he's like a defining moment of my life. But yeah, you're right. That's probably a real big thing.
Or like Matt Lauer. He was a household name.
Yeah, you're right. Where in the world is Matt Lauer right now? He's not working for. We know where he's.
Show?
Yeah, we know where he's not.
No, it's just his family logo, just like the Trumps is just their name in gold.
Gotcha. Succotash.
You're not dedicated. Gifted?
Gifted like the Eiffel Tower. No, like the Statue of Liberty. Sorry, I was getting cultural dyslexia there for a moment.
Statue of Liberty.
Yeah. Came from the French, and the French have the Eiffel Tower in France. And we're at the Cherry Blossom Festival, gifted to us by the Japanese, which celebrated cherry blossom.
Russia gave us the teardrop that's in New Jersey.
And Russia gave us the teardrop that's in New Jersey, which is where Sputnik comes from. But Russia is definitely not the birthplace of the potato, which is the United States of America.
I feel like all your videos are going to be of nighttime, not anything in the day.
No, I filmed quite a bit in the day. Oh wow, this is neat actually.
Oh, they took out
So do you see how this, he's in a mountain and it would come out of over there?
Oh yeah, I see
Okay,
it.
guys, you want to keep going? We're almost there.
Yeah, I have to like
Come on, dude,
focus
use
the
those
light.
legs. Look at that. Look at the
It's
jump.
gonna change the focus here.
And the tidal basin. You can paddle boat the tidal basin. Actually, you can put paddle boat the Potomac too.
Alright, that one was good. Alright, everybody. That's it. See ya.
States during World War II. This generation America has a rendezvous with death. Destiny.
Sometimes destiny involves death.
What does this say?
Pledge. I pledge myself to a new deal. It's pitch black. I could put on my...
Flash? I mean, if you follow it, it follows his, like...
Oh, I gotcha. Oh, interesting, yeah. His, like, terms and, like, what he's known for during them. The Ducks rule, DC.
gate y el
Don't run into anybody.
Malachi. I'm right there. See his strength? See his legs right there. Right there, y'all see it. Go to the line. Right there, look, right there.
जीवन में कोई टेंशन ही नहीं है उसको जैसे
It's a dog. Well, it's a fox. Cat family. It's a dog. That's a porcupine. There's porcupines up there, aren't there? If I have to tell you not to do that again, you're going to be grounded for a month.
JC, we're not playing with the fire truck anymore.
JC, get up.
That's why it says they're in danger.
Airdropped into the east. Hit the ground running or find yourself stopped upon impact. Find life in a constant queue. Alternatively, wandering aimlessly, lost in a maze that begins at its end. Say the Pledge of Allegiance as you breathe the city in. Careful not to open your mouth while in the gutter, or see the flood of its waste forced upon you. Call me Poor Richard, look it up. Righting this wrong, from where man is higher than a mountain. Look right beneath that ledge straight there where there's a little alcove.
Oh yeah.
Can you see the spotted?
Yep.
Where?
Looks like a slug.
Yeah.
Let me see.
A gray seal.
He's going to it.
He's gonna swim right back in that corner. Nope, he's coming out. He's going down. Here we go.
Grace, he wants us to move.
Did they overreach?
If there's a loss of power and cabin visibility is reduced, lights will illuminate the aisle to guide you to an exit. Please take a moment to find the exits closest to you.
gentlemen, it's our pleasure to welcome you to Salt Lake City with our current local time. It's approximately 9:17 a.m. We've experienced a 2-hour time change from Washington, D.C. Please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened and your carrying items stowed until the aircraft is parked at the gate and the captain has turned off the seatbelt sign. Use caution opening the overhead bins to prevent injury from items may have shifted during flight. You may now use your mobile devices, and before you leave the aircraft, be sure to check your seat pockets, the overhead bins, and the floor area around your seat for any personal items you brought on board. We invite you to visit Delta.com for all your future travel needs, including checking in for a flight or managing your Sky Miles account. On behalf of Delta, the Sky Team, our global partners, but especially your Atlanta-based pilots and your Seattle-based flight attendants, thank you again for sharing your journey with us. We've enjoyed having you on board and look forward to serving you again soon. Have a wonderful day.
So I'm back. Just landed here in SLC, and I feel like I can see for the first time in a few weeks. You know, everybody that I was talking to out east that had been out here kept calling it the big sky country. And as soon as you've experienced the two poles, or the extremes I should say, then you know exactly why it is that it's called that, because, you know, you're overwhelmed with sky. I had a hard time kind of orienting myself while I was over on the East Coast. At times, you know, you can certainly use geographical landmarks like the coastline and other things to that extent to gain some sense of direction and orientation. But with there being so many little jetties and eddies and deltas and peninsulas all over the place, it's kind of confusing, because where you think you're at isn't where you actually are at, and where you think north is isn't where north is. You know, and I kept asking people, well, what do you guys use? Like the trees, like, you know, certain trees as your landmarks to gauge your position and whatnot. When I was in DC, which by the way I loved, I was thinking, how would I gain some sense of direction if I was to live here long enough? From where I'm at, it's the mountains, specific peaks. I know the peaks, I can travel through the mountains, and you know, the faces that I see on these peaks give me a sense of where it is that I am located. And I would probably say that the obelisk, you know, would be the thing that would orient somebody more than anything else in DC, because it kind of towers above the tree line. For the most part, there are certainly points and areas where you're not going to be able to see this structure. But you know, even with there being similar sides on each side of it, I would think that kind of, if you were to live there long enough, you could gain a sense of direction based upon what was in your vision while looking at one of the sides or faces of the obelisk itself. You know, it's like being in kind of Manhattan. You use the buildings as the landmarks. And I think that's what a lot of people do. Either that, or it just seems like everybody uses their phone constantly. But you know what? I kind of don't like to do that, because I like to really look at everything that I'm traveling through, and it's hard to do that while looking at your map constantly, you know, and it's hard to listen to everything that's going on if you're constantly, continually listening to directions and stuff like that. So I think that if I was to live there, I would definitely try to hone in my senses based upon what it is that I just said. But
I'm glad to be back. I love the East Coast. I didn't feel out of place at all. I felt very welcomed by everybody, you know. And there were a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds. The hostel was nice. It was a new experience. And in DC, you know, everything is so focused on politics. In that place, the lobby downstairs continually was just people talking about different politics. And I had one pretty good discussion with a few folks. A kid named Majit, who was from Palestine. Those are his words. And a kid named Matthew, who was from Austin, Texas, but grew up in Connecticut. And it seems like life there is very focused on the political aspects of life, you know, but out here, that's a sideshow. Politics are something that you use occasionally to get to where you want to go. It's not necessarily the show, right? That's not where you're going. That's not what you're about, is politics. There, that's what it is. That's what it's all about. And that's kind of, you know, the ride that everybody's on. They're all waiting in line. While they're in line, they're talking about politics, and the ride itself is politics. You know, here, it's like you use politics and personal politics, which by my definition is pretty much any tactic or action or vocalization that I use to kind of get what I want to a certain degree. You know, you see all the buildings there and everything like that, and it's this whole setup system that you have to go through continually, and the bureaucracy involved is kind of ridiculous at times. It's like, can't everybody just be a representative of themselves? And do we really have to go through this process every single time we try to take a step? You know, I'd rather just move and let my movement be my politics. So yeah, I loved it out there. It was hot. The heat there, I feel like, is almost like a bubble or a cloud around you. It's like a mistiness, you know, a very dense atmosphere of heat. And here it's almost like being under a magnifying glass or something, to that extent, if I could describe it like that, where if you're focused in the sunlight, it's very concentrated. There it's a little more dispersed, you know. It's a different thing, you know, and I hate to say things are better or worse. I just think that things are different, and, you know, I love experiencing the difference. I'm grateful that people have their own personal opinions and viewpoints in life, and I was lucky enough to share some of my own opinions and outlooks with a great friend of mine that I grew up with. Her name was Fatima, and she took the time out of her schedule to lovingly show me around the city and give me a night tour and all sorts of other things. And so I'm very grateful for her for doing that. And I feel like I grew up with a lot of strong individuals that, you know, helped shape who I am, and I feel like we're going to take the world by storm. Life in the sky, looking off into the blue, holds an apologetic attitude towards staring into the abyss of the ocean deep. The further you go, the darker it gets, until aspects of light once again emerge, getting higher until height becomes depth. Rather than pressure, it is the lack thereof that fuels expression. On cloud 9, devoid of time, an allowance to dream, perhaps tasting in nostalgia like a binky, flexible yet sound, providing a comfort. Life in the air is carried on a breeze. Trade winds take things from here to there with ease. Learning its patterns is something that comes with age, though what it is only known by those that know it not, making the most learned the ones not taught. Innocence is innocent to how devastating and destructive a force it is. I'd like to think that life began on a cloud, overcome with emotion, having made its way back up to where it could then see.